She looked like she belonged behind a whiskey in a black jazz club at 2 a.m., or drinking espresso in a coffee house, listening to some wannabe hipster mangle the language in a mellifluous way. But I wouldn't have met her in either of those places. I was working in a bank. I kept regular hours, in bed every night at 11, up by 5:45. Weekends, I'd sometimes go crazy and stay up till midnight. I wore suits and ties, shoes with a shine that glinted on a sunny day. I met her in a copy shop. I was Xeroxing papers from an elderly lady's estate for our trust department. Our machine was being repaired at the time. Our machine was like some stretches of highway. It was always being repaired. She was alone, as she would have been in the jazz club or the coffee house. Even at that first sighting, I could see or sense she had the air of someone who is comfortable alone, prefers to be alone, lives, as they say, in a world of her own. She was duplicating poems. I guessed they were poems. I could see the words scattered on the pages, not regimented in rows and columns like on a balance sheet. I should have known right then that she was not for me. I'm not well read, but I know about the dark lady in Shakespeare's sonnets. She could have auditioned for the part. She could have been the mold. She had skin that looked deeply tanned, but that was its natural color. She never went out in the sun. I think she had Indian blood. She had the cheekbones for it. She never said, of course, not a word about her parents or family. Like that other dark lady, a cipher, a mystery. Her hair was jet black and her eyes, they were the last thing you noticed about her and what you remembered. Her eyes were gray like stones under smooth, cool water. Her eyes drew you in, held you, and gave nothing away. She was beautiful, but would have scoffed if anyone had noticed. God, she'd have died if anyone had ever called her pretty, although she knew she was. She was on the run from pretty, and nice. Earnest, though she would never have you think it. She was hiding everything that mattered, burying it all deep in her poems. Her poems, when I got to see them, were caustic, not lyrical at all, the sweet sentiment that I thought was poetry. Hers were full of danger, cruelty, violence, guns, knives, pain, screams, shooting, drugs, and suicide. Abuse. Also the pointlessness of everything. When I asked her about it, she shrugged. Write what you know, isn't that what they tell you? Look around. What do you know? She wore men's shirts, out-of-style tweed sport coats and blue jeans, not what you'd call a feminine look. She wouldn't have wanted anyone to think she was feminine. Later she pushed it further and got into black, long before black became the rage. I remember hearing how horrified Tom Wolfe, the author, was when his white ice cream suits became so popular. She'd have felt the same way when black arrived. What can I say? It's a lame phrase, but there was just something about her. Maybe the danger, the coldness, and also her beauty, so aloof, and those eyes, haunting. She intrigued me, copying poems in the middle of the day, as if that was as important as the disposition of a sizable estate. Yes, I thought she was beautiful, but I had to keep that to myself. I had to pretend to be casual, disinterested, though I ached for her. She twisted me up inside like a braided rope, or when you squeeze a cloth to wring out the water. She wore a frosting on her lips that looked like a coating of ice, and when I finally kissed her, her lips were cool and her eyes were open, examining me. That didn't happen in the copy shop. It didn't happen for almost 2 months, in fact. Yes, her eyes, the way she'd look at me, questioning, mocking, what are you up to, what's your game, what are you, and then blank, disinterested. I don't care. Everything about her was ironic, except at certain moments, her eyes. Every so often they'd spark, they'd get that questioning look, as if surprised, as if something out there, me, had caught her attention. She didn't pay attention to much. She hoarded it, her attention. She thought people were foolish and the world was a dirty, exhausted place. I guess it was a challenge to try and draw her out of her shell, show her something wonderful. This much, very little, I learned. She'd been different as a young girl, a real kook, an egghead, one who'd rather read than dance or talk about boys. Forget talking with boys. She never went to pajama parties or a dance or any type of social occasion. Forget about sports. She had no friends. Her parents thought she was something special, a prodigy, poor thing. When she grew up, she became even more different, a defiant individualist. Though being introverted, she was quiet about it. She didn't care if anyone else knew. She knew. She wasn't the least perturbed by the fact that she was a virgin at the ripe old age of 24. She saw herself as worthy, unique, triumphant, not trivial, boring, and dismal, like the others who had laughed at her and then gone on to be housewives, careerists, or both. If she was lonely, her loneliness made her strong. She may have been an outcast, but she belonged to a sorority of one. It was that in her that I liked, that strength, a keen self-confidence, born out of nothing but herself. But as I moved in closer, it began to go away. I can describe it exactly. It was like an intricate pattern of frost on a window, that amazingly complicated vegetative carving. And if you saw it and tried to study it closer, marveling, your breath, just the warmth of your body, made it fade. You had to stay away, or it would fade. But you could not stay away. So with her. The closer I got, the more it receded. That strength, her character, until at last I knew that if she ever accepted me, it would vanish altogether. I took away the thing in her that I liked the most. Can you beat that? I couldn't.